Hey everyone, welcome back to the Black Rain Trust. This is episode 210, Black Tech Talk. Please hit the like button as you come in and share the video if possible. Docket and description needs the video so you can follow along. Give you all a few seconds before we get started. Q497, what's going on? All right. Wanted to have this discussion because Black Tech Talk. We usually do deep dives on Saturday so that we can get a laser focus on some of these subjects that we think are complex and of interest to people. So this talk is just a refresher of what we have been talking about before. The cloud computing wave that's happening right now is a part of the fourth industrialization of these emerging markets that's happening right now. So wanted to take another look at it and try to put more emphasis behind some of the stuff that is happening right now. Um, some of the stuff you probably never even heard of. So we'll probably try to dissect it just a little bit for tonight. So I'll give you guys 90 seconds before we get started. What's going on, Complex? Let me see if I can pull something up here. All right, cool. Let me You're always super serious, bro. Like you work for the IRS. Man, I get that critique all the time, and I don't know any other way to be, man. That's just the way how I get down. I'm a no nonsense cat, so I think a lot of dudes play around too much, and that's why I try to stay away from that. So it's a flaw on my part. I'm trying to work on it. All right, complex. I'll be waiting here. Take your time. Q4. If you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. That's how I think. At least for me. All right, we're gonna get started, man. Yeah, complex, man. They say we're snobs, and then you're too serious and stuff like that. Either way, man, I'm okay with the critiques, man. I throw my face up there because it, I'm ready for whatever. So I ain't got nothing to hide. All right, so first item on the docket, the basics of cloud. So the basics of cloud. So what is the cloud, right? The cloud is network computing in a remote location, as and used as a hosted service. So Amazon is the biggest cloud provider, right? Biggest cloud computing provider right now. Amazon Web Services, AWS, and then right behind them is Microsoft with their Azure product. Um, and what cloud computing provides you is computing power through an elasticity that is scalable. It also provides network infrastructure as well as storage infrastructure and data management services and various services as a service. And what this has allowed the industry to do, it has revolutionized the industry. So now you don't have to spend a whole lot of money building up a data center. You buy the necessary components and time that service time that you need to get your platform up and going. Before it would have spent you would have spent millions of dollars on a data center just getting it up and going. Now you can build out your computing stack, for a fraction of the cost. So that's why cloud computing is so important now. Everybody's making this major transition from legacy data centers to the cloud. So they're starting to shut down their data centers to save money. Everybody's doing it. It's a strategy. It's a business strategy that's winning right now. So let me share my video, my screen, and let me see if you guys can see this. Q497. Yes, I do invest into cryptos, but I'm just hodling. I'm not actually trading anything like that. So, all right. So the three major stacks of cloud, right, is IaaS, infrastructure as a service. So infrastructure as a service has um, what you manage on the core level. So this is the foundational level of the cloud computing stack, which is applications, data, runtime, middleware, and operating systems, and then your service provider, whether it's AWS or Microsoft or Oracle, um, will provide the uh, virtualization, servers, storage, and networking. So all your foundational hardware will be provided um, by your service provider, which is either AWS or Microsoft or whoever you choose. Everything else you're going to run for yourself. It runs right on top of that stack. And then you go into the middle, and the middle is PaaS, which is platform as a service. Platform as a service basically is the application platform that you're trying to run. So if you think about the larger aspect to an application suite is going to be what you run in PaaS, which is platform as a service. And in PaaS, you're basically just running the applications and the data off of that stack. But what the service provider is going to provide you is the runtime, middleware, OS, which is operating system, virtualization, servers, storage, and networking. So some of what you see in IaaS is shifted over to PaaS because a lot of the responsibilities are now being shifted over to the provider, um, and less of the responsibilities is in your care. So the difference between IaaS and PaaS is the sharing of responsibilities. You'll notice that in the first pillar, the responsibilities are shared between the two. So, um, but in PaaS, you see that 2/3 of the stack is responsible for by the vendor, and what you manage is just the existing percentage of it, which is just the application and data. This is a typical strategy that most companies run in order to mitigate costs. And then SaaS is software as a service, and that's typical that everybody uses. Gmail, Office 365, um, Netflix is a service, software as well. I wouldn't say Netflix, but any enterprise applications that are delivered over the network and does not install on your machine is considered a software as a service. So you pay for the service as you go, and um, for the most part, nothing installed. There's nothing to install on your machine. Once you finish paying for the service, then the service is terminated and you have no access to it. So that's how that works. But that's the three pillars of cloud computing for right now. All right. So item number 2 on the docket will be Apache Cloud Stack. So let's talk about that for a second. And what you're seeing on your screen right now, or you should be seeing in the next few seconds, is Apache Cloud Stack. So Apache Cloud Stack is the open source cloud computing platform that focuses on infrastructure as a service. This is free, so you can download this as you see in the screen. You can download the latest version of it and run it for yourself on available hardware. So if you were going to create your own cloud computing service, or you were going to leverage Apache Cloud Stack for your next endeavor, for your next project, then this is where you will go to get it, and this is how it runs. So let me just read the caption real quick about Cloud Stack. Apache Cloud Stack is an open source software designed to deploy and manage large networks of virtual machines as a highly available, highly scalable infrastructure as a service cloud computing platform. Cloud Stack is used by a number of service providers to offer public cloud services and by many companies to provide an on-premise private cloud offering or as part of a hybrid cloud solution. So the term hybrid in this context means that you share some of the responsibilities and then you delegate some of the responsibilities somewhere else. So you could run your own private cloud cloud platform, and then you can share some of those services or some of the responsibility with AWS or Azure or some other cloud provider in order to mitigate against any sort of security risk or to mitigate against costs. Cloud Stack is a turnkey solution that includes the entire stack of features most organizations want within an IaaS cloud: compute orchestration, network as a service, user and account management, a full and open native API, resource accounting, and a first-class user interface. Cloud Stack currently supports the most popular hypervisors: VMware, KVM, Citrix Server, Zen Cloud Platform, XCP, Oracle VM Server, and Microsoft Hyper-V. Users can manage their cloud with the easy-to-use web interface, command line tools, or a full-featured RESTful API. In addition, CloudStack provides an API that's compatible with AWS EC2 and S3 for organizations that wish to deploy hybrid clouds. So as it mentions, it's compatible with or it supports a lot of your virtualization platforms that's available right now. So VMware being the most popular, and then everything else being secondary, including Microsoft's Hyper-V. Virtualization is important because that's how most of the environment is going to be run. All right, let me see if I can pull the documentation for the most recent. too long. Basically, this is the latest version that's out right now. I can see what the date is. Um, right. So the latest date for this build is actually April 9th, 2019. So this is fairly recent, within the last 30 days. This is good because they keep up with their software updates. And if you want to know more about the release notes, then what you'll do is go to documentation and then go down to release notes. And what that's going to tell you is that what's new inside the version that was just deployed. So then we can click on what's new in 4.112. They have not posted those notes yet. It must be fairly recent. So, oh, okay, here it is. The new version is basically just a maintenance update. It's a maintenance release. It has fixes and improvements on the 4.11 release. So version 4.11 included more than 400 commits, 220 pull requests that fixes more than 250 issues since the latest release. So let me just go down just a few of the updates. Support for Zen Server, improved support for VMware 6.5, hosted high availability framework and high availability provider for KVM hosts with NFS as primary storage. So network file storage is NFS. Yeah, there's quite a few updates here. I'm not going to read them all, but if you want to look at that stuff, the link is in the chat. Or it's not in the chat, it's in the documentation beneath the video. Hey, what's going on, DE Raptor? What's going on, Sean Perry? So that's Apache Cloud Stack in a nutshell. It's free. You can download it, and you can run your builds off of it. No need to go to Amazon or Microsoft. Um, hey, no problem, Joshua. All right, so third item on the docket is platform as a service with Apache Cloud Stack. So I mentioned this earlier about the variations in cloud, right? So IaaS and PaaS and SaaS. So PaaS is platform as a service. This involves orchestration of application deployments and things of that nature. So this goes beyond the infrastructure piece. This focuses on the middleware piece of how you're going to drive your cloud computing portfolio. So let me share my screen again, and I can show you. And I can show you Cloud Foundry. So Cloud Foundry was started some years ago, and then Linux Foundation actually picked it up, and then it started to pick up steam. It started to pick up steam in terms of the updates and application deployment. So open source cloud application platform. So that's a part of this PaaS from Cloud Foundry. Cloud Foundry makes it faster and easier to build, test, deploy, and scale applications, providing a choice of clouds, developer frameworks, and application services. It is an open source project and is available through a variety of private cloud distributions and public cloud instances. Cloud Foundry has a container-based architecture that runs apps in any programming language, deploys apps to Cloud Foundry using your existing tools and zero modification to the code. Sanitate, deploy, and manage high availability Kubernetes clusters with Cloud Foundry BOSH on any cloud. So basically what they're saying is this is the middleware that was mentioned in the graph that we saw earlier of PaaS in terms of the variations in cloud deployments. This is what you're going to use to push out your would-be applications, whether it's blogs or hosting digital wallets for cryptos and things of that nature. That's where all of this is going to go. And it works, not independently, but it works in a way that is agnostic. So it accepts any language, as I said in the description, and it doesn't matter what the application is, it'll run it. As long as it's coded correctly, it'll run. So bring what you run is basically what they're trying to say. Run apps in your language and frameworks of choice. Again, this is what they're just mentioning. I'm just reiterating what they said. This is what you would run on top of Apache Cloud Stack. So you haven't even spent any money yet other than the labor costs of what it would be or time. And these are just the various projects that they're running on Cloud Foundry. So this is a proven platform you can actually download for yourself, and it doesn't cost you much. All right, so the next item on the docket is containers. So why are containers important? Containers are basically lightweight virtual machines. Mentioned earlier about VMware. So VMware makes virtual machines software, and then what containers are basically a lightweight version. It's basically a highly dieted version of full version virtual machines. And what you would run on containers is very lightweight applications. So let's say you have a Survey Monkey page used for surveying, sending out surveys to and hosting surveys for various audiences. Another one would be, something like a digital wallet. For your cryptos, you can run that right inside the container. Containers are isolated, so if they do change, then what happens here is the container can become no good. It can kind of kill itself because if there's any change in the hash, then what happens to the container? It becomes no good. And you can just spin up a container just as simple with a few mouse clicks. So this is a pretty simple way of managing virtual machines in the cloud. And you can run all of this on top of Apache Cloud Stack, which is free. Now I added Docker. If you're looking at the screen, I added Docker because Docker is the most popular container for on cloud computing that you can get. And what Docker does is it actually orchestrates and it deploys your containers in the cloud. This is probably the most popular thing you can get. There's something else called Kubernetes uh, that can be run through Apache Cloud Stack, but um, Docker is the you know kind of the household name in cloud computing if you want to run containers. So I'll just read this quick paragraph. Docker collaborates with open source ecosystem through an array of projects that continue to fuel the containerization movement, the Docker platform, and other Docker products. So there's various versions of Docker that could be run, right? Various projects, and they can be run either through a GUI or CLI, which is a command line interface. So I'll just read the few that's on GitHub right now. So BuildKit is a set of tools for building and packaging software using containers. So I mentioned earlier about running applications on PaaS, so platform as a service and software as a service. So this is where this comes in. So they do have a project going for that you can download from Docker. And then Compose is define and run multi-container applications with Docker, so you can again run more than one application at a time. Um, Container D. Basically, Container D is the cloud native computing standard or foundation with an emphasis on simplicity. So they've made it so basic and fundamental that anybody can run it now. And then you have the rest of your various projects that go with this. You really can't go wrong with Docker. Everybody uses Docker. So if you're going to get into cloud computing, you got to know Docker. So take the time to actually study the README files for Docker. You don't have to actually use it, but you do have to actually understand it. And there's actually a Docker certification as well. So, but you don't need the certification to actually run it. But it's good to have certifications when you become experienced enough, especially if you're going to apply for jobs. What's going to happen here is having that Docker certification is going to be huge on your LinkedIn profile. People, because companies are looking for this right now as we speak. All right. So next item on the docket is Apache Open Whisk. So Apache Open Whisk is serverless computing. Now, the term serverless comes from using code as infrastructure. Basically, you're not running a full server. You're just running a fractionalization of the server itself to get the necessary computing instance that you need. So now we're talking about fractionalization uh, in terms of computing. So let me just read this description real quick. Apache OpenWhisk Incubating is an open source distributed serverless platform that executes functions in response to events at any scale. OpenWhisk manages the infrastructure, servers, and scaling using Docker containers so you can focus on building amazing and efficient applications. So I mentioned Docker just a few seconds ago. You need to know Docker in some way, shape, or form. You don't have to actually be an expert at it. You just need to understand what Docker does. So Docker is the container managing and deployment aspect uh, of um, of cloud computing. And what OpenWhisk is the serverless portion or function um, executing functions within the container itself. So code goes inside the container. A container is a lightweight VM that holds small applications, and this reduces the cost of spinning up services inside the cloud. So it would cost you, pennies on the dollar to run um, certain serverless functions or microservices is what we call it. So if you want to scale up, so let's say from 12 in the morning to 6 o'clock in the morning, you have a lot of dead time because it's at night. What happens to that server or that serverless function, serverless computing, it scales back and it reduces the amount of cost that it runs to run a server by not using up a whole lot of computing resources. That saves a lot of money because what can happen during your peak hours, let's say if you're an e-commerce site, let's say you're Amazon or your toy not Toys R Us, if you're Target or something like that, your computing elasticity can actually scale with the load. So if there's a Memorial Day rush because of a sale, it can go from one or it can go to 100, and then it can constrict itself back down to one when the traffic dies down. That's genius because you're trying to reduce costs by working with scale and scalability, vertical scalability, going up and going down, or scale out, which is going wide. Let me read this further. The OpenWhisk platform supports a programming model in which developers write functional logic called actions. In any supported programming language, that can be dynamically scheduled and run in response to associated events from external sources or from HTTP requests. The project includes a REST API-based command line interface along with other tooling to support packaging, catalog services, and many popular container deployment options. So I mentioned this earlier about responding to events. So an event would be a 1 hour sale online on a certain e-commerce website like Fashion Nova or something like that. Women may run to or may pick up their phone, hit the website because they posted something for the next hour and it's on sale and it's counting down. You're going to see a mass influx of web traffic and computing traffic to that website, and what that's going to do is it's going to scale up with the load. So if you get 100 people coming, it's going to scale up for 100 people, and it's going to scale up even more based on what it estimates is going to come. So it goes from 1 to 100 and 100 to 1,000, and then after an hour, it's going to scale back from 1,000 to 100 and 100 to 1, and then it's over. So you saved a lot of money and you saved a lot of resources doing that. So that's Apache OpenWhisk, and you can download that. That's free. Everything from Apache is free. And here it says it deploys anywhere, right? Since Apache OpenWhisk builds its components using containers, it easily supports many deployment options, both locally and within cloud infrastructures. Options include many of today's popular container frameworks such as Kubernetes, Mesos, OpenShift, and Compose. In general, the community endorses deployment on Kubernetes using Helm charts since it provides many easy and convenient implementations for both developers and operators such as Minikube. So again, they talk about containers, and that's something you need to know. In the chart on the image on the left puts emphasis behind the container platforms such as Kubernetes, and Mesos and Docker Compose, which is what I mentioned earlier. We just went over that in the last item. And write functions in any language. So functions is code, microservices code. So basically, work with what you know and love. OpenWhisk supports a growing list of your favorite languages, such as Node.js, which is JavaScript, Java, Go, which is Amazon's language, Scala, Python, PHP, Ruby, and Ballerina. If you need languages or libraries the current out-of-the-box runtimes do not support, you can create and customize your own executables as zip actions, which run on the Docker runtime by using the Docker's SDK. Some examples on how to support other languages using Docker actions include Rust and Haskell. Once you have your function written, use the whisk CLI, which is command line interface, to target your Apache OpenWhisk instance and run your first actions in seconds. Integrate easily with many popular services. So again, there's a lot of flexibility here in terms of what you can run in the in parallel with serverless computing of OpenWhisk. There's a catalog, you can click on it and it will show you all of that stuff. Packages offer integrations with general services such as Kafka, which is run by Apache, messaging queues, database including clouded push notifications from mobile applications, Slack messaging, and RSS feeds. Development pipelines can take advantage of integrations with GitHub, Jira, or easily connect with custom data services from IBM Watson for translation or speech to text, as well as the weather company. Combine your functions into rich compositions, scaling per request, and optimal utilization. So this is what I was mentioning earlier, that you can scale based on the event or the request that comes in. So if you have a flash sale going on at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 12 o'clock in the afternoon, then what happens here is you can scale from 1 to 100, from 100 to 1,000, and so on and so forth. So scale per request is what's going to happen here. So this is what happens in the background. So that's Apache OpenWhisk, and that's the serverless computing side of cloud computing. And then we'll go to the next item on the docket, which is Apache DLT. All right, so Milagro from Apache is distributed crypto system for cloud computing. Multi-factor authentication, which is what MFA stands for. Replace passwords with multi-factor authentication. So what is Apache Milagro incubating? Apache Milagro establishes a new internet security framework purpose-built for cloud-connected, app-centric software and IoT devices that require internet scale. Milagro purpose is to provide a secure, free, and positive open source and alternative to centralized and proprietary monolithic trust providers such as commercial certificate authorities and certificate-backed crypto systems that rely on them. So what Milagro tries to do is replace your security certificates that are owned by some of the providers, the major providers like VeriSign or Komodo, just to name a few. And it decentralizes, so it puts the ownership of security back into the hands of the administrator. Milagro is an open source pairing-based cryptographic platform that delivers solutions for devices and end-user authentication, secure communications, and fintech blockchain security. Issues challenging cloud providers and their customers. It does this without the need for certificate authorities, putting it putting into place a new category of service provider called distributed trust authorities. This is very similar to blockchain, but just using the authority aspect rather than the Bitcoin aspect. So the authority is going into a distributed ledger, or the certificate authority goes into the distributed ledger. So this is important in terms of the security aspect and why, um, in terms of running open source blockchain platforms, especially a free one. You want to make sure your security is nice and tight from a certificate authority perspective. So certificate less, TLS for apps and things. So TLS stands for Transportation Layer Security. That's the new protocol that is in place for your doing business on the web. So how your mail and your web connects to certain servers and websites is through TLS now. All browsers, including Firefox and Google Chrome, and I believe Microsoft Edge, force TLS and encryption on every source of web traffic. So this is important to have in your arsenal when you're building out your cloud platform. And the next item on the docket is microservices. We talked about this earlier with Open whisk. So let me share my screen again. Trying to get you guys onto this one. So introducing Hippo, a microservices toolkit. It all be it all began when I started to build some web servers in Golang. And every time I have to create the whole architecture from scratch, then solving whatever problem I was trying to solve. So why don't we use one of the available frameworks? Go is different compared to many other programming languages. It is built for the modern web and it has a built-in standard libraries to accomplish most web programming tasks. To make this argument clear, let's have a look at HTTP handler for vanilla Golang Python, Python, PHP, and Java. So these are some of the coding functions that go in for the language that they just mentioned, Golang, Python, PHP, and Java. This is how code looks for those who have never written code before. So basically, you have function statements being pressed into the line of code. So the function handler is making a request, and then the format is fprint, which then says hello world, which is what you receive when you hit the website. So you'll see in Golang, there's less code to be written, right? 2 to 3 lines, whereas in PHP at the bottom it shows that there's several lines that have to be coded, and that has to be correct before you even publish it. Because what happens here, if the code is not correct, then it's not going to display. You're going to get a 404 request or 403 that says forbidden. So it says It is understandable why frameworks are needed for some programming languages. In Golang, you can achieve a lot with standard libraries in a simple way compared to PHP, Python, etc. Actually, most Go web frameworks go all the way to the native abstract the native standard libraries calls and limit your ability to customize stuff under the hood. So, as I mentioned before, you will notice that the lines of code is far less than in Go than what it is here in PHP. PHP requires a lot more lines of code. And same thing for Python and so on and so forth. But this is a part of microservices. So what they're basically saying here is that microservices, which is serverless functions, remember I mentioned about the online sale um, that you would have running in the background in the container that utilizes microservices would scale up and scale down based on the events and the amount of requests that comes in. The amount of code that needs to be put into it is actually less in Go than it would be in PHP, Python, and Java. So it's important that you understand different languages going in. You don't have to be a master. You just need to understand um, what it is that you want to do and what it is that you're trying to do. So now that we hit all of the variations of cloud from infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, to software as a service, we can now focus on the training aspect of cloud computing and how you can get into this um, sort of part of the new emerging IT market because this market is in high demand. So first things first, when you want to get into cloud computing, you need to get into Linux. The Linux Foundation has free training um, for Intro to Linux, LFS 101. This is a very good way to understand what's going on with Linux functionality in the cloud. So Apache Cloud Stack, OpenStack, various other forms of AWS, Oracle, they all run on Linux. 90% of the market runs on Linux in the background. So in this regard, you would need some form of introduction to Linux. I recommend highly that you take this because you're going to need it. And it's free. So you can enroll, you'll get a certificate at the end when you complete it. And it's 60 hours of 60 hours of course material, hands-on labs and assignments, video content, discussion forums, unlimited access to online courses, optional pay certificate. So you can pay $20 or something like that for the certificate, and it's beginner level. So you should be able to pass this without a blink of an eye, and there's no prerequisites. So anybody can take this. So if you know how to use a computer, you can actually take this. It's not that much to it. Just make sure you have a functioning computer, whether it's uh, Windows with a VM that you can run Linux on, like Kali Linux or something like that, or you can run Ubuntu, or you can run, CentOS, whatever it is. As long as the computer is modern enough, it should be stable. All right, next item in the list for training is again from a Linux Foundation. It's Introduction to Infrastructure Technologies, so LFS 151. This- another free uh, another free training for introduction to cloud computing. So before you even get into Apache Cloud Stack, before you get into um, AWS and the rest of these new cloud computing function foundations, you got to get into introduction to cloud infrastructure technologies. So this is self-paced again, 50 hours of course material, video content, discussion forums, beginner level, and there's 21 chapters to this, and then it's a final exam. You really can't beat this. It's free. You need it before you even touch or download OpenStack or any other cloud computing platform available. Who just joined us? Hey, what's going on, Dollarwell?
Hey, what's going on, bro? I say I'll jump on. I'll be the crash test dummy for tonight's
Yes.
discussion. You know,
Mhm.
let me see. I just jumped on. Which one of those links did you click on? Because you said free, man. That got my attention there. I like free. Which under? So this is under training number 8 underneath the video, or where are you?
I'm on training.
And which one of those links under training did you just click on?
I was on link number 2, so that should have been Intro to Cloud.
Okay. All right, free. Okay. So and what can we do after completing this train? Let's see, how long is the training
It's
right
60
here?
hours.
You said 60 hours. Okay. So and how okay, 60 hours. So how many hours per week do people normally do?
I always recommend 90 minutes a day. Um, that's for an adult, I think that's considerable. Um,
Okay.
right. So there's 40 hours in a work week. You should be able to get 90 minutes in a day. You should be able to do that in 2 weeks.
Okay, so 2 weeks they should fit, and so that kind of gets you in like on the ramp to like deeper study. Is that the point of this introductory?
These are literacy trainings. So if you can get past these, you can get
It's
involved
sort
in
of
the
like the
technology.
a jump start kind of thing, right?
Yes, but it's very necessary to have these sort of trainings because it gives you all of the necessary fundamentals of what I'm talking about. So it may sound crazy. It may be going over everybody's head now who are not familiar with this stuff. But the purpose of those trainings is to get you familiar with exactly what I'm talking about, so you can talk exactly like how I do.
O- Okay, now after let's say a good 2 or 3 weeks to get through this 60 hours, how long does it take to get through the I guess to go through the other modules to be I guess job ready?
Once you finish all those modules, you should be ready for an interview.
Okay, and so how long are we talking? 1 year of training, or
No,
6 months, or 2 years? What are we talking?
no, well, you have to have some kind of computer background to begin with. Um, so if you were a web developer, that's actually really good because um, the transition won't be as burdensome. But if you have never worked with IT or anything like that before, it may be a bit more difficult. But the trainings have labs and stuff for you to do. So if you can pass the labs, and you can pass a job interview.
Okay, so how much time are we talking about going through the modules and going, documenting some lab work? Because we talk again, I'm just coming from the standpoint of someone with no experience.
So each one is 60 hours. So if you're following the links in the training, um, in the docket.
Okay, so consider like each link is a month. This is, I mean, I'm just trying to lay
Yep.
out a. So if you take each link, you go through a month, 60 hours a month. Okay, just being real, like, I guess leisurely about it. And
Hmm.
so you're saying that along the way that correspond with each of the modules.
Hmm. Yeah. So.
Okay, okay.
Mhm.
So you saying 4 months? After 4 months, I will have covered four modules with documented lab work.
Yes, and they'll print out a certificate for you, unless you want to pay for it. So you got to pay for the certificate. I think it's like $50 or something like that. It goes straight to your LinkedIn. So on your LinkedIn, it will show that you made this, you completed this course, and that your these various companies that are looking to hire will see that you completed this, and they'll know right off the bat that you what your capabilities are. So then
Okay, and so in this case, that would be four certificates.
it should be about four. Yeah, it
So
should be
that's
about
two
four.
hundred dollars, $200 to get the certificates, and that goes on my LinkedIn, and the prospective employers can use these certificates or these certifications as a demonstration of my seriousness.
Absolutely. Linux
So that
Foundation, yeah, Linux Foundation is a very credible source in the industry. So if you're taking their training courses, then this means that you're serious.
okay, and so then that would make me at least give me consideration to be interviewed for an entry level position.
So there's no such thing as entry level in this part of the industry. Either you can do it or you can't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's no such thing as entry level.
Okay,
I,
so
I've seen I've seen people come from Starbucks, as baristas, and they get right into cybersecurity and get into this type of stuff almost dead simple, no problem. It's all
okay.
depending on the person.
So basically, we're talking in under 6 months, someone could go from zero to um
Hero.
working.
Yeah, for the most part. For the most part, it depends on what company wants to take a risk with you. I like I said, I've seen people come from Starbucks as baristas and get right into it without any problem. So
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I think. Us newbies. That's what people need to hear. So you change your life in 6 months or less with some due diligence.
right, yeah. Let me get to this next one. All right, this next one is Introduction to Cloud Foundry and Cloud Native Software Architecture. This hands-on workshop will teach you how to deploy and manage applications on the cloud on Cloud Foundry. Grow from novice to knowledge hound in your spare time. So this one is 24 hours. This is the least amount of time that is required. And what Cloud Foundry is, it focuses on platform as a service. So this is what I was talking about earlier in in the number three portion of the third item on the docket, which is or I should I'm sorry, yeah, number three on the docket. This is Cloud Foundry. Cloud Foundry is used to deploy applications independent of their languages and code. And the training here is 24 hours of course material, hands-on labs and assignments, video content, discussion forums, unlimited access to online course, optional paid certificate of completion, and it's beginner based. And the prerequisites are some experience deploying web-based applications. So if you're a web developer or you know something about HTML, that's highly considerable for you. Comfortable using the command line and SSH, which is secure um, shell host, socket host. Sorry. Little to no Cloud Foundry experience. So you don't really need to know Cloud Foundry, but the content is there for you to study um, within this training. And it's 24 hours, so you don't really need a whole lot of time. Hey, what's going on, Complex?
What's up, Ulysses?
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. What's going on?
I'm chilling, man. Just
Oh,
doing our thing here.
Yeah, finally got dinner out of the way and done, so I'll try to jump in before you finished up here.
Yep. All right, next one is Introduction to Kubernetes. So I mentioned Kubernetes earlier. Kubernetes is part of container orchestration and deployment. What containers are, again, is lightweight virtual machines. So you can run lightweight applications inside these virtual machines inside the cloud. Kubernetes is one of the premier um, open source platforms for this. So it says, want to learn Kubernetes? Get an in-depth primer on this powerful system for managing containerized applications. Like I mentioned earlier, containerized applications. This one is self-paced, 10 to 12 hours of course material, hands-on labs and assignments, video content, unlimited access to online courses, beginner level. And there are 16 chapters in the training. So some knowledge of Linux system administration is helpful but not required, right? So if you can work with command line, even at the bare minimum, then you should be able to take this. But there also is in this docket an introduction to Linux, right? So LFS 101, I did put that in there. So you should take LFS 101 before you get to LFS 158. You can't get to 158 without taking 101, or else you'll be lost. And what are some of the certifications, right? So there are certifications for Kubernetes. You don't really need a certification for Kubernetes. No one is going to hire you just because you have a certification for Kubernetes. I mean, you may get a lot of looks, but if you don't have a whole lot of experience, then it's going to be difficult for one to get that certification, and two, if you do get the certification, you definitely have to prove, what your worth is. So I would advise at getting certifications like this without having a whole lot of experience. Hey, what's going on, Josh? Um, but the certifications I will recommend is that you definitely focus on the next two, which is CompTIA Server Plus. I mentioned this several times before. Um, it's one of those things. These are low-hanging fruit. We consider this in the industry a low-hanging fruit. CompTIA certifications like this. Basically, CompTIA Server Plus certified candidates can work in any environment because it is only vendor-neutral certification covering the major server platforms. It is the only industry certification that covers the latest server technologies, including virtualization, security, and network-attached storage. So
When you refer to this as low-hanging fruit, what does that mean?
low-hanging fruit means these are gimmies, right? These are the ones that you can study for a few days to a week, and then you can go take the exam, and it looks good on your resume because it's from a credible certification provider, as well as it's in the realm of growth for a possible server administrator.
Yeah,
Gotcha,
these are something is better than nothing certifications.
gotcha. Thanks.
Right, so it focuses on virtualization, storage, security, and troubleshooting. Um, this this is more about literacy. So if you can grasp the studying and whatnot for this certification, it looks good to people who are hiring. So they see Server Plus, they see the certification, the hard certification here, and it applies to cloud computing because servers drive cloud computing right now, right? And will for the foreseeable future. So they
Is
like to
there
see.
is there a lab work associated with this that could stand in for lack of experience?
If you read the book, Server Plus book, and watch some of the Server Plus videos or videos on data centers, you can get a fair grasp on this. I know this certification does have some labs on it. I'm not entirely sure how much in depth they go, but it's definitely something that it's it's passable for the most part. Is what I'm saying. So I wouldn't worry too much about doing labs and stuff like that if you've worked with a desktop computer or have an understanding of what a server is. You should be able to pass this exam. This is more about competency, if anything else.
Okay.
And it's just one of those things that's good to have. They don't expire. At least to my knowledge, I don't think the Server Plus expired. Maybe Josh might correct me if I'm wrong.
So you don't have to pay to keep it current.
You probably do have to pay to keep it current now because you need CPEs. So you got to attend events or webinars or something like that to keep it current. But that's all about the maintenance aspect of certification now. All right, next one is from CompTIA again. This is the Cloud Plus. This is a step up from the Server Plus. So you grab that Server Plus and then you grab Cloud Plus. It's one of those things that they're both of these certifications are in parallel with each other, and tells prospective prospects who are trying to hire that you're serious. So Cloud Plus is not that widely known in the industry, but it still gets people's attention in the process. So what does Cloud Plus focus on? So Cloud Plus covers increased diversity of knowledge, skills, and abilities required of system administrators to validate what is necessary to perform effectively in data center jobs. Cloud Plus views cloud-based infrastructure services, which is what I was referring to about Apache Cloud Stack infrastructure. Cloud-based infrastructure services as an increasingly important piece of organizations' IT systems. It is the only vendor-neutral, performance-based certification covering more than a specific vendor or single function, like security or networking, to help you better realize the return on investment of cloud infrastructure services.
Does this one complement some of like the Amazon certifications?
It does. But in this regard, we're not focusing on Amazon because this is agnostic of Amazon itself. This whole entire hangout is mostly focused on the open source availability of Apache Cloud Stack, which is a open source foundation. So that's Cloud Plus. You should get the Server Plus first, and then go for Cloud Plus second. I recommend it in that fashion. I've done certifications back to back, 2 on 1 day, so you should be able to do both of these if you're skilled enough. Guys like Josh, guys like Christian, they can do 2 on 1 day on these, and it looks good on your resume. So. All right, let me go over the salaries.
Yeah, the money. Let's get to the money.
I'll look in Atlanta, since Atlanta is a interesting place for IT professionals.
Uh-oh. That just went over some heads.
Let me see. If I'll type in OpenStack. All right, cool. Here we go. Right here. Let me share my screen with you guys. So we're looking at right here is cloud engineering jobs um, in the Atlanta area. So we're talking about the southern region. Atlanta is a major tech hub of the South right now. Um, and what we're looking at right here is a cloud engineer role. Doesn't really give me too much of a salary perspective, but according to the salary estimates on the left-hand side of the screen, it shows that salaries are starting at $103,000 in Atlanta. Six figures goes pretty far in Atlanta. Property is pretty decent down there, anywhere between 103,000 to 140,000. My architect was making 140 grand last year, so he he's doing fairly well for himself. Doing fairly well for himself.
Hey, Mike, I did want to just add real quickly here, sort of like a niche industry with regards to what you're talking about is the film industry right now in Atlanta. Because whether people know this or not, uh, the film industry is growing by leaps and bounds in Atlanta because I forgot, I can't remember when they signed this into effect, but they basically signed like a tax exemption law, right, to basically solicit uh, production companies to go set up shop there. Tyler Perry was one of the first notable people to do it. But now, like people like your special effects people, all your IT people that deal with database administration with regards to the filming industry and all that, that's another hot sector in Atlanta in terms of the IT sector that's really recruiting heavy.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, Mike. Can you go back to that salary blow up that you had? What's up with those salaries that's 500 plus? What the heck is that?
Where you see 500 plus.
And zoom in the way you showed the 103 to 100, the one you at the top you were looking at, where it says 43. Let's see, right below that, what is that? 115 to 500. What is that? Is that 115 plus or 115 to 500 plus? What does that say?
No, it's $115,500.
Okay, okay. Man, I'm about to have a heart attack, man. All right.
I was
Okay.
gonna say if it's 500K or something like that, man, that's like a CEO position or
I'm,
something, man.
I'm like, I'm about to change my life, you know. I'm like, I've been living wrong. I've been wrong.
Hey, we've been trying to tell people. We've been trying to like where the money's at. Like, shoot, we're 200 plus episodes deep into this game. Hey,
Yeah, let me look up Raleigh. Raleigh is a new hotspot for the tech industry. So Red Hat is actually in Raleigh.
Raleigh Durham, try that. There you go.
So Raleigh is not that far off in terms of salary. So salary wise, it's 90K up to 130K. Not that much of a difference. But Raleigh is very competitive. It has Duke University, it has UNC, it has NC State, it has various major institutions down there that crank out a lot of top talent. So um, Raleigh is fairly strong in terms of competitiveness.
didn't a couple other large firms set up shop in North Carolina? God, I'm trying to remember.
Lenovo is in North Carolina.
Okay,
Dell is in North Carolina as well.
Dell, right?
Yep.
Um,
BMW is in South Carolina, if I remember correctly.
yeah, and that's like a majority like automated factory there.
Well, you got that medical research stuff going on in Raleigh Durham, but try Charlotte, North Carolina. That's like the financial. Uh, I think that's like a financial center.
Hmm.
A lot of finance companies have relocated there. So between
Bank of
Charlotte,
America, Bank of America is huge there.
right. So
I think
between
that's I think
Charlotte,
that's where right.
here, Charlotte and Raleigh Durham. That's where the money is, I believe, in North Carolina.
Hmm. Yeah, salaries all the same. Um, Jobs are the same. It's not that much of a difference. Same thing in Atlanta. You're seeing the same thing in Raleigh. Let me look at Houston real quick, and then I'll do Chicago.
Joshua 336. I think we got a winner. That's a North Carolina area code.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I got states mixed up. Yeah, if
Yeah,
you're in North Carolina, now is a good time to stay down there.
yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, Andy. That's what I thought. PayPal's there too.
See Houston. So Houston, right in the same ballpark as Raleigh, um, Raleigh Durham. So housing, pretty much the same, getting the same square footage and things like that. Only difference is you're in major critical area in terms of Mother Nature down there. So, but outside of that, it's all the same. It's all relative. Chicago, Chicago.
Did you say you're checking out Chicago?
Yeah, because Chicago has Walgreens.
Chicago's a bit interesting, man. You got a lot of companies fleeing. I know Career Builder. When I lived in Chicago for a few years, I was in that. That's when I spent my time in human resources, HR work. So I know Career Builder. I want to say they're based there, or they have like a major hub there. Trying to think who else is
Well,
major. Yeah, Walgreens.
don't forget you have major universities in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Loyola.
Yep. They have one of the best medical facilities in Chicago, and as well as children's hospitals,
Yep.
pediatrics.
Yep. Yeah, that's where my wife was from. She was from Chicago. She went to Loyola actually.
Yep.
Yeah, lot of like their education, like the educational institutions.
Hmm.
You got Northwestern. Northwestern. That's just over in Evanston, which is, it's like basically like a suburb on the north end. I'm trying to think what else you got there. A lot of well, you also have the one of the Fed banks.
Yeah,
One of the federal, yeah, yeah.
Federal Reserve
So
of
there's a lot
Chicago.
of right, right. A lot of banking goes on there too.
Yep.
Isn't there also a stock exchange? I also believe.
Yep. Chicago Stock Exchange.
Yep.
Let me try Seattle. Yeah, Seattle's right on the money. Um, Major tech state, so Microsoft is there. Many other companies are there, and base salaries are right around what. There's a lot of feedback coming from you, Complex.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities in Seattle because there's a lot of growth up there tech wise. So you're looking at the base salary right here in the lower hand corner, around 134 grand a year. Um, that's a considerable amount for something for a place like Seattle, especially if you like dealing with the rain. I guess that's a good place. Sorry. Joshua 336 in the chat says, "Does company size matter as far as gaining knowledge and experience?" It does, and then it doesn't.
Yeah, I was gonna say yes and no.
And then let me hit Vegas.
If it's a if it's a small company, it depends on what you did there. Like if you built out their stuff, right? and then you go and take that experience to, a more established company. You're trying to get a position there, and then you say, okay, well, look, see that right there? Okay, that I built that. Okay, that stands alone, right? Because then a recruiter or an HR manager will then start to kind of poke and prod into, the nature of what it is that you built, why you built it, the methodology behind it, and they want to see if there's synergy maybe with the position that you're applying for. So depending on what you do, yeah, yeah.
Look up Boston. Yeah, base salaries all relative. It all depends on if you're going to own a vehicle, and I think if you live in Houston, you're going to need a vehicle. Same thing in North Carolina, you need a car. I don't know how broad their rapid transit system is, but yeah, California salaries are relative too as well. Based on the cost of living out there, 137 grand on average starts roughly the same as North Carolina and Houston. A lot of these jobs can be done remotely, so you don't actually have to be in some of these high cost of living areas. So living in a place like in NC or SC or Atlanta, Houston, you can live in these places and actually make it pretty well remotely, and get the same salary.
Versus if you live in the Bay Area and you're getting this salary, you're probably going to be living in an RV parked outside of the Google campus.
hmm Joshua 336 asks, if I have no previous experience, should I shoot for smaller or larger? It depends. No previous experience means that you have to have done some kind of internship, or you should have done an internship. So in this regard, an internship doesn't hurt you. It actually helps you. 3 month or 6 month internship, doing some QA work, cleaning up databases and stuff like that. That actually helps you get a lot of hands-on experience. I know some companies do a small stipend, so you may get some, $20 or $25 an hour. That's actually considerable for entry level work in this regard, because there is no entry level in this part of the field. This is where the big boys play. Think of Isaiah Thomas, trying to bang against, the big boys in the league. So
So this is like NFL summer camp. You make the squad at the end, you on the team.
yeah, for the most part, a lot of guys move on. A lot of people I move on. I shouldn't say guys, because women are involved in this as well. People move on after their internships. It's not uncommon, um, because they get other internships or other opportunities. But if you have a fairly decent uh, ability to grasp things on the fly, it does help. I'm a very visual person, so I have to see things being done first, before I can actually grasp it. Because telling me one thing and then expecting me to do it, especially if there's more than one way to skin a cat, then that doesn't always work for me. For example, I have three different people that can do the same job three different ways. So if I sit down and I talk to all three of them, they're going to give me a very confusing way of how the process goes. So standard operating procedures, SOPs, have to be put in place, and if they have that, then that actually helps. But if they don't have that, that can be a downer for you. Ghana Warrior says you need a car in Atlanta. Um, I always thought Atlanta had a bus system, but I guess you're right about that.
And what's that system they have down there? What moving African Americans rapidly through Atlanta? What's that thing called? Marta.
Yeah, Marta.
Yeah.
So those are the salaries. So you're looking at these salaries are anywhere between 85 to 100 and 110 to 120K, which puts you in well into the middle class pretty easily.
Did you see? You got a question from Joshua. Did you see that? Maybe you did.
No, I didn't.
It, it says if I have no previous experience, should I shoot for smaller or larger?
Oh yeah, we touched on that
Oh,
one.
okay. Joshua says, I have a day job. Are there chances of nighttime internships or weekend heavy internships?
No, no such thing as that. Internships in IT are full time. They are definitely full time. Yeah, I wouldn't try to. There's no weekend work in IT unless you want to work, 4 days on, 3 days off, Thursday through Sunday, and then have, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off. That sucks, man. I've been there before, and I won't ever do it again. But to each his own. The way how I see it is, either you got 2 feet in or you don't. You can't be half pregnant on this. You got to go full. You know, you got to go balls deep for the most part.
This is I would say it's a bit of a lifestyle, kind of being tech oriented. Um, yeah, I mean maybe Mike. I don't know. Maybe that's something that resonates. Maybe you can elaborate on that. But that's just kind of a point that I did want to make, though. That this is kind of like a lifestyle.
Yeah, it's definitely a lifestyle. You have to Yeah, you have to want to be in these sort of environments um, all the way. Uh, the whole culture, like complex was just mentioned, it's a lifestyle. So how you how you'll get ahead is how much effort you're willing to put in. This, I mean, obviously we talked about racism before last week about what to do about workplace racism and stuff like that, discrimination. But I always tell you all to make sure you're loaded up. Get all those certifications, take all those trainings, go to all these meetups, download the Meetup app. Make sure you're politicking and networking with people on the ground, shaking hands, making eye contact, those type of things. That's going to be more beneficial than even some of the stuff that I've talked about, because FaceTime, handshake time, all that stuff is going to matter, because who you know is going to be more important than what you know. You can bring what you know, but if you don't know anybody on the inside, you're not getting in, right? So, or it's going to be more difficult to get in. So, it's better to load yourself up with all this knowledge and then show up at these meetups, or some of these events. And then when you get into these circles, you bump into people and you hear them talking. You can interrupt that sort of discussion, and you can start spitting some of your knowledge that you know. So then you got to control that conversation. So it's about, so you're taking control of that conversation in group of people that don't look like you, and they can be like, oh, this guy Ulysses, he's pretty sharp there. Here's my business card. What's your LinkedIn? Let's connect.
That would be CQ, correct?
Correct. Also, I want to mention you should be familiar with at least one programming language. I discussed that earlier with the microservices piece. Um, whether it's Python, Node.js, JavaScript, Java, or Go, which is Google's language. So knowing those one of those languages, having some familiarity is key to Bash, which is born again shell for Linux, is probably going to be the bare minimum that you need to know um, going into this. Let me see. Joshua336 says CQ. So CQ is about cultural intelligence. We've discussed cultural intelligence on this on the Brain Trust. The last maybe month or so. We've been talking about cultural intelligence, the ability to interact and adapt with other groups of people who speak different languages, who come from different backgrounds. So interoperability with different groups in this industry, in some of these emergent industries, is very important in order to do business. It's impossible to do business without it. Um, so you need to develop your cultural intelligence. Yeah, keep it techie says PowerShell. Yep, PowerShell is important too. You may not use it, at least to my knowledge. I don't know if you'll use PowerShell in the cloud. I haven't seen that done before, but it's better to know it than to not know it. Yeah, if you don't have a LinkedIn account, you got to create one. I see too many black men who have the capabilities to actually do some of this work. They don't have a LinkedIn account. They say they don't trust LinkedIn. I tell them you're crazy. You're absolutely crazy if you think you're gonna network in this globalized economy without a LinkedIn account. I hate LinkedIn personally, but it's a necessary evil. I think it's personally I think it's a joke. I think there's a better way of you know uh, being involved in these industries without having to use that version of social media. I think that version of social media is terrible. Um, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense as to what the whole design of it, but people use it, so you're gonna need to use it as well. Make sure you put up a professional image, similar to like my avatar, minus the glasses. Um, and just make sure your LinkedIn is clean. If there's any gaps, you got to explain some of those gaps. Make sure your most credible skills are mentioned first, and then everything else is miscellaneous. Goes to the bottom. Uh, um, you know, Major certifications such as cloud computing certifications are more important than your bachelor's degree. If you have a bachelor's degree, so make sure you put your most recent certifications and most credible certifications above your bachelor's. If you have if you don't have any certifications, then yeah, putting your bachelor's degree up is going to be credible as well. But that's why I tell you guys to get the certification, get the low hanging fruit, so you can put that on there as well.
Hey, hey, Mike, can you hear me okay? Can you guys hear me?
There's some humming in the background.
God, okay, hold on.
Oh, so like I was saying before about LinkedIn, necessary evil, got to have it. Professional image on there, headshot. Make sure you're connecting with as many people as possible. The more people you're connected to, the easier it is for other people to see who you're connected to as well. I'm connected to several people who are connected to people at Google. They all everybody looks at everybody's profile to see who's doing what and whether or not they're a viable prospect. Um, Maybe they might be opening up a role. They haven't posted it yet, but they're looking for candidates, and they do a Google search and they see that you got a cloud computing background, you got a networking background, you got a system admin background, you got certifications that pop up on their radar. Those are the things that matter. That's what they're looking at, because they haven't met you yet. So that profile, if your profile is tight, your mouthpiece is going to sell you at the end of the day.
Okay, how do I sound now, Mike?
It's good enough. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say maybe on one of these hangouts, we can go over maybe like resume building and like the HR aspects of like recruiting. I can give like I was a recruiting manager. I can kind of give you guys like the nuts and bolts on what human resource managers and recruiters like look for and how they go about looking for things, how they go about looking for candidates. A lot of what Mike said was dead on.
Mhm. Um, let me read some of these comments in the chat. Andy asks, is there any way I can develop a system for stocks and futures? That's something you might want to talk to Dollar Will about. I don't know if I can answer that question.
Well,
Q497.
let's assume he's asking about software, in which case it would throw back to you. That's what I'm asking him. Is he talking about creating a app? Let's see if that's what he's talking about. See, that would be my question too. What would be a path for that?
Q497 asks, after Server Plus and Cloud Plus, what are the next certs one should get in the ladder? So depending on what platform you're going to work on, you'll probably go for AWS or you'll go for a Microsoft Azure cert. So both of those certs are credible. It's all depending on what you're trying to do. If you want to just be a sysop guy, which is basically a cloud system administrator, have at it. Sysops is easy to get, and once you pass Server Plus and Cloud Plus, that's actually 1/3, if not 50% of the battle on that exam. So the knowledge that you gain from the Server Plus and Cloud Plus, that's going to make it easier for you to actually go into those certifications. Joshua 336, he asked, is it possible to go straight to cloud architect, or do you start with cloud administrator or engineer? Yeah, you can't skip to cloud architect. You got to go through the ladder. Starts from sysadmin or sysops all to engineer, and from engineering to solutions architect, and from solutions architect into a technical architect. A technical architect is extremely rare. They're usually a lot older too. They usually have some years behind them, so you can't just go straight up and down the ladder like that. It kind of prevents you from doing that. Let me read Andy's question again. It says, is there any ways I can develop a system for stocks and futures? So it sounds to me like you want to develop a system that monitors the market for stocks and futures. If that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I mean, if it's software based, I mean, I know a lot. I've seen a lot of platforms come with a coding language, and they have modules to teach you how to do it. Like on TradingView, I think they have a coding language. TradeStation has a coding language, and on their sites, they have material to teach you the coding language. I think MetaTrader has one, and I'm not involved in any of them, and that is my goal in 2019 to learn
Are you
one of them
are you sure?
because I
Are you
I do. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
No, are you sure it's coding language, or or is it just an API? Because most platforms just use an API to connect to another system.
It's they have scripts, certain like language, a language actually to create an like a I guess it would be an API that you're creating.
Okay.
And then they have their own marketplace where you sell the the program or the API, or sell subscriptions to it, so people would buy your your API, I guess.
Yeah,
Like pay monthly or yearly, and they would, so that's like a whole industry unto itself. And they have these like rankings of the best performing script, in the market for this month or this quarter. So it's like a whole competition. If you create one that ranks, then people, man, it starts selling itself, as you can imagine. So it's like a whole, for people that's really deeply into day trading, of whether we're talking stocks, futures, forex. It's a whole niche within itself, and people that are good at it are making probably more money doing that, creating those apps, than they are actually trading.
yeah, but in this instance, I think what he's trying to do is build a system that does what we call web scraping, so
Uh-huh.
he can actually automate that task to go out there and web scrape. So in this regard, all he has to write is um, a very small program inside Python or with Python, and what that would do is it will scour the web for all of these stocks and indicators, and will scrape all of that data, all that metadata, bring it down to a system, and then pitch it into a dashboard, so that he can have a full view. Why he would want to do something like that is because he wants to centralize all of this information. I think many people have done this in the past. So you could probably copy a lot of stuff off of something like GitHub or something like that. It's been done before. I don't recommend that you reinvent the wheel just to be reinventing it, especially if Goodyear has already made the tire.
Right. Yeah. I've seen some of them for fundamental data like that, and then some are technical in nature, where it will um, these screeners are already out. It's just like automated screener. It's continuously scanning the live data of stocks and futures and currencies, looking for certain setups that you've programmed it to do. And it's all basically part of a trading bot. Basically, you would be making a trading bot, an
Yep.
automated trading bot. And they have these, like I said, competitions. Who's got the best bot for this month or this quarter. And there are actually some YouTube videos around where people put the performance up of their bot. So.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, but other than that, no, I don't know how to do it, but that's my goal in 20. I mean, I'm reaching a point now where, just like some of my methods in trading are getting to the point where they're too tedious. And I, just for sanity, I have to start to, take on some level of automation, because it's just too hard, too laborious to go through all these different ways of analyzing the data. It's wearing me out. So now I see the necessity for it.
Hmm. Yeah, Keep It Tech, he got it right. He says search github.com. Joshua336 asks again, think it will be possible to make a lateral move from an engineering discipline to cloud engineering, given I collected the search and prep resume linked in. Um, they see, in this part of the industry, performance matters. So it's what you can demonstrate rather than what the certifications you can get. Certifications just are there to determine your level of knowledge. It doesn't really tell them what you're capable of doing. This says how literate you are about a certain discipline. So in this regard, you still have to demonstrate. So you can, most of the time they're going to ask, what's your GitHub? Do you have a GitHub? Because they want to see what kind of projects you've worked on, so they can download the projects and look at them and evaluate them. If you don't have a GitHub, then you're not moving out of that. You won't even get into that sort of lateral discipline, lateral role or lateral maneuver that you're trying to make.
This is where I was talking about if you've actually built something, okay, then that's when they're gonna look at it and scrutinize the shit out of it and ask you questions about it, because then they'll want to see one, they'll want to see your, like, how you creatively code. If they throw a problem at you, or what problems you encountered while you coded, this project that we're talking about here, that you're telling me about. And and then also they'll be able to better assess, like, what your capabilities are, what you need to be taught, right? What you already know, and how it's synergistic to what they're looking for. When I used to interview, and when I used to source and recruit and interview guys, I worked in the steel industry. So, I needed guys who could do all kind of stuff: operate equipment, weld, fix hydraulics, pneumatics, you know, um, programmable controllers, for automated machines and stuff like that. I needed to know who could do what, and really, it didn't matter where they came from. Really, I had guys who rebuilt reactors and boilers and stuff on submarines, and then I had dudes who used to weld rigs underwater, did underwater, like, rig welding and stuff, like on oil rigs out in the Gulf and stuff. So it's really kind of like across the board. It's what you said, Mike. It's about what you demonstrate, your competency, what it is that you know. And we think we've been joined by someone.
Joshua 336 in the chat asking, do you foresee changes in digital marketing and digital advertising due to growth in cloud computing? Yeah, and that's what that's what I was referring to earlier about containers, containerization, microservices, serverless computing. All of that stuff is encompassed in sort of the digital marketing, digital advertising that takes advantage of these sort of very lean platforms, lean platforms and lean integrations and methodologies such as DevOps, right? So that all comes into place, and that's what I mentioned earlier about earlier in the hangout about scalability. That's what cloud computing has allowed, right? EC2, which is Amazon's Elastic Compute computing platform for scaling out or scaling up computing resources. So you can go from one CPU to four CPUs to eight, eight CPUs, so on and so forth. 1 gig of memory to 4 gigs of memory to 64 gigs of memory, and just a snap of a finger. That's how it works now. That's never been seen before. This level of technology hasn't been seen before. So, at least not in the past, it hasn't been seen before. So the ability to scale up and scale down and scale out and scale in is something that tech companies, not tech companies, but companies in general have been looking for to save on costs. So you could have spent pennies on the dollar. You could spend pennies on the dollar, just spinning up, a CPU and then shutting it down within the next 90 seconds because you just needed that sort of time slice of computing to do a necessary job for the time being. And then you shut it down, and then you get a bill for $5 or $6, and then you just pay it. This is fundamentally where we're going in terms of computing. Who just joined us? Oh, what's going on, Mr. Joshua?
What's going on, fellas? How y'all doing?
All right.
Good, good. How you doing, sir?
Hey, congratulations on the job. Everybody. Our brother Keep It Techie has found new pastures, so he's doing well.
You.
Oh yeah, appreciate it.
Good stuff.
Oh, congrats, bro.
Thank you, thank you.
Can you tell everybody what it is that you do?
Well, this new opportunity I got will be working as a database administrator for actually for the U.S. Navy down in San Diego. So
Hmm.
the only problem is I gotta move down to San Diego, but
Wait, whoa. You had where are you at currently?
Las Vegas. So I'm like
Oh,
5
okay.
hours
Well,
away.
yeah, you're not that far. Okay, dude,
Yeah.
'cause I'm in California too, man. That's what's up.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I got the experience. It's um, just been tough since I moved out here to Vegas to secure something. So I've been kind of doing a lot of lower end tech jobs just to keep myself afloat. And finally, an opportunity came up after about 2 years. So yeah.
Now, do you need a security clearance for that or no?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I got a security clearance. Also, anything with the government. I think I pointed this out before on one of the other hangouts. You you need to have that security plus certification to work with the government. It's a DoD. Uh,
80,
I forget what it's called. You know, Mike.
8970.
Yep. Exactly. In order to secure one of those positions.
Hmm.
Yep. But one
Yeah.
thing I wanted to point out though, which I was talking about, GitHub. GitHub is a great resource if you it in order to help you learn programming because you can not only start your own project out there and get help from other people, you can also help other uh, programs that are out there. And so you're not building the code from scratch. You're seeing the issues that are in the code, and that will be noted on your GitHub account that you've um, supported an application by creating fixes, and it all depends on if the person accepts the fixes that you got that actually created the project. But if your fix solves that issue, then that goes under your portfolio as well as something that you worked on to come up with a solution. It also looks good on your resume, meaning that you can see a problem and figure out a way to fix that problem in order to, um, so if you're coming in on a new position and they got most positions, they already have people that have already worked on this stuff, obviously, and they want people that can improve upon the code that's there, and that'll show them that you can look at code, scrutinize it, and fix it and make it better. Uh, so that's all I wanted to say.
Based on some of the stuff that you've heard us talk about tonight, what's your take on what I've
Well, I kind of missed everything, to be honest, up until the point I said something in the chat. I was, like I'm saying, I'm still trying to get myself right. So I do Uber through the day sometimes. So I had to do that and then just got back home. So I kind of missed everything, to be honest.
Okay. Okay. So basically, what we're talking about tonight is cloud computing at a deeper level beyond the entry level. Um, Apache Cloud Stack, so you can download that. That's free, right? Apache's open
Hmm.
source.
Yep.
You can spin up Cloud Stack as infrastructure as a service,
Hmm.
and you can layer that on top with Cloud Foundry for platform as a service. And then after that, you can layer it again with function as a service, which is the microservices or serverless computing. And serverless computing or microservices goes inside of the container, and the container sits inside or sits on top of uh, Apache Cloud Stack. So now you're talking about having full-fledged cloud computing out of the box um, for relatively nothing. It's free.
Yeah. Well, one thing I could say to that, I know with cloud computing, um, I like to break it down, especially when I'm talking to somebody. I like to break it down to the simplest terms. Is I mean, cloud is really all it means is someone else's computer,
Yep.
and you guys know that. But it's I mean, it's somebody else's computer hosted somewhere. Like all these companies, like Microsoft, they got Azure. Google has the Google Cloud. I forget the other ones, but anyway, you could spin up services on these cloud platforms um, with with for nothing for free. Like Azure, all you had to do is set up a Microsoft account. You can spin up cloud services. You can create containers. Um, well, not create them, but set up containers by pulling all the containers, or is just a image of an actual program. It's not the full server itself. It's the image of the program itself with everything that's needed, and it runs within that container. And I know y'all probably already explained all that, but yeah, I mean it's I don't know. Cloud computing is cool, and I haven't messed around with it too much, but I have messed with the Google Cloud platform on my own and spent up a few servers. So
Yep. Yeah, and a better description to add on to what Josh is saying about containers. Containers are lightweight VMs, so they're
yep,
basically stripped down VMs strictly for applications. And even now, the latest versions of containers can actually run full-fledged computing on it. So
yep,
you can use containers for various things. They're starting to use containers now for chatbots and um, what do you call that? Artificial intelligence now. So
yep,
the ability to run very microservices at the bare minimum of computing power is available now. There's also GPU computing as well, so graphics processing computing. So basically using an NVIDIA graphics card or AMD graphics card to leverage the computing power from those graphics cards for added computing power is something that is tremendous in terms of cloud computing. Recently, AMD and Cray have just formed a partnership. Let me see if I can pull up the article.
Hey Mike, I'm gonna go and jump on my computer because my phone's about to go dead. So I'll join y'all in just a second.
Yep. Let me see if I can pull up this article. All right, this one is from Cray.com. So Cray and AMD work together to provide high-performance computing for demanding environments. The combination of the Cray CS500 cluster supercomputer and AMD EPYC processors result in a flexible, high-density system that can take on the toughest workloads. You get four dual-socket nodes in a 2U chassis, each node supporting two PCIe Gen 3 X16 slots and uh, hard disk drives SSD options. AMD EPYC 7000 processors support up to 32 cores and 8 DDR memory channels per socket. The CS500 line also includes a 2U chassis with one node for large memory configuration, visualization, and service node functionality to complement the compute node form factor. So Cray makes supercomputers for those of you who don't know, and the partnership actually with AMD would put them at the forefront of the top supercomputer in the world, which is what they're working on. So this is big news. Now, Cray makes supercomputers for those of you who don't know. And big companies like this are always cool to work for. So I went to the jobs page just to kind of show you what kind of roles are available. You know, system engineers, um, field support engineers, global remote service engineers, application analysts, performance engineers, system engineers again, performance engineers, interns, just in time, so JIT, just in time compiler engineer, DevOps engineer, high performance computing, so HPC, system administrator. So these are these are very robust opportunities that you see posted, and that's why I clicked on the link so that you guys can see what exactly they're looking for. So let me just click on one of the jobs. So primary duties and responsibilities of a system engineer: respond directly to customer requests and assignments, work at the direction of customer, provide technical and operational guidance to the customer, serve as a liaison between the district services manager, sales, the customer, and the site staff, utilize Slack to keep customer and coworkers abreast. These are very they make the role seem like you're going to try to put a a man on the moon, but in reality is a lot of these jobs are opportunities that you guys can actually take advantage of. If you get that background in cloud computing and get the certifications necessary, this is where you would be at. Cray is no small company. Cray is actually a very well-known company in this industry. So next one is a system analyst. Primary duties are provide technical and operational leadership and guidance to other team members, serve as primary POC, which is point of contact for new installs, customers, customer application or escalations, I should say, and other significant site events. Serve as liaison between district service manager, sales, and customer, and the site staff. These are very again, these are very easily attainable roles, and but it does say you need a top security clearance. So good luck to you. But yeah, just to reiterate, everything in the link is actually free from a download perspective, including the training, certifications you got to pay for, salaries anywhere between 85 grand to 120 grand. Can't can't really beat some of these some of these salaries for some of these roles. And I think you guys are missing out big time if you don't start studying for your sysadmin, MCSE, MCSA, as well as some of these other certs as well that I've mentioned in the past. So Dr. Will, you have anything you want to add to this before we close out?
No, sir. No, sir.
Reigning woman, how are you doing? It's always good to see you advocating for us on other channels and as well as this one. So
Raining woman, I don't know if you're gonna do a show in the morning, but if you are, I'm hoping to drop through.
I don't know if her channel is back yet, so we'll see what happens.
Oh crap, they got her. Okay.
Oh yeah, she's been down for about a week or so. But there's been somebody in the manosphere taking down people's hangouts, so very interesting. Hey, what's going on, Michael Holt? Keep it techie. Any certifications on the radar for you with this new role?
Well, currently I've been doing a lot of skill port training because one of the requirements for this position, they wanted me to do a little um, skill port training, which is, I mean, that's a paid service. Most companies use that to, find out if you have the knowledge that you say on your resume.
Mhm.
And I seeing the problem is I have the experience as a database administrator. I've actually worked in a role, but I haven't look too deep into how to get the actual Microsoft certifications
Mhm.
that I need in order to complement the experience that I have. So, I mean, and that's just something on my part because I've been having to, handle other issues. But that's the next step because I mean, it seems like uh, database administration is something I never thought I would want to get into because I really didn't like databases. I really like networking. I went to school for networking. I understand the way servers work and all that. And I also would prefer a Linux role, but
Mhm.
um, so that's why my interest was never there in getting those certifications as well. That's why I focused on Security Plus, Network Plus, and start focusing on Linux. But I think in order to move up from where I'm headed at the moment, I would have to buckle down and get into those Microsoft certifications and get the SQL um, training there. Which the problem also with Windows certifications, there's not much free resources out there as far as um I mean, you can obviously torrent some stuff, but I don't recommend that. But um is most of the training is they offer to businesses to send people to, and it's not offered to the public as much as like the CompTIA exams and
Mhm.
Linux Foundations exams, all that stuff. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Now it isn't 100% Microsoft SQL that you're using. It's got to be some other forms of SQL, right? MySQL and um,
Well, yeah, MySQL, I mean, it uses the same syntax as MS SQL or Microsoft SQL. It's the same syntax. It's very minimal on the differences because I mean, SQL is the the foundational language that all of these database applications use. So Microsoft uses SQL. All of them use SQL, which is the foundation that was created. I can't remember the history on it, but um, yeah, they all use the same language. So as far as like writing queries and all that stuff, I mean, you can learn on MySQL and still uh, translate that over to, oh yeah, Oracle is the other one. You could translate that over to Oracle as well as Microsoft SQL. So
yeah, I think in that role that you're in, business intelligence and database administration is something that a lot of guys haven't really kept up with. Especially the BI portion. Business
hmm
intelligence is very important. So the ability to leverage, you know, what do you call that? Just slipped my mind just now. Data science.
Yeah.
data science for database querying and searching for records and organizing these big data lakes that companies generate a lot of data for, especially the Navy. So
Hmm.
you have all these platforms that are connected out on the high seas and logistics, supply chain, all that stuff comes into play, creates massive databases. So
Oh.
uh,
Well, one thing I can say about this is, and this is just to help people if they want to go that route as far as database. Um, the funny part about it, how I kind of got into database. Uh, I'm a Excel kind of guru at the end of the day. I've worked in Excel, since the military, like early military, and all Excel is, well, all a database
mhm,
is a collection of tables.
mhm,
And those tables can be related to a spreadsheet in an Excel document.
mhm,
And that's all it is. It's data in a table, in a spread, or say a spreadsheet. And
mhm,
all you're doing is putting that data together in the database and designing it based on the needs of whatever they're trying to get from the data. So that's really how I got into it, because I started out as a kind of an analyst or a data analyst, where I was um, writing VBA code to manipulate data in spreadsheets, as well as um, what do you call those things? Pivot tables, pivot charts. So people, because all they want to do is, at the end of the day, the people want to see the end result, which is uh, putting together some type of graph for some supervisor saying, "Hey, I want I want to see the first quarter numbers for the marketing department as far as whatever," and they don't care how it's made, or how they get to that point. They just want you to get to it. So
mhm.
that's mhm.
Yeah, that Oracle has their own OCA database certifications. IBM has database certifications as well. But I think instead of getting a certification, I personally think that a certificate is more important, right? Especially from an accredited institution like Georgetown University, some of these Division 2, Division 3 schools. Um, those are just as important as the certification itself. So a certificate is what you learn versus a certification is what you've mastered in. So you already, if a person already knows, how to manipulate databases and create database and stuff like that, a certification may not always be necessary. Having a certificate as a refresher and having that credible institution that's behind it can be just as good as having a Microsoft cert.
Yeah, yeah,
And it could be, relatively the same cost, and you're not really breaking yourself to study anything because you're really just sitting in the class or online and just listening to the lecture, answering a few questions, and then you receive your certificate at the end. And what that's going to allow you to do, that connects right to your LinkedIn account, or you can actually print it out and put it into a plaque or something and just bring it with you, to your next interview. But for the most part, you don't see too many database um, certifications because it's kind of a learned it's a learned art, it's a learned skill, but it's also an art form, to be able to manipulate data inside these giant data lakes and forests.
hmm
Hmm.
Yeah, I want to just add like that. Raining Woman, she dropped her link to her backup channel. So everybody, if you want to stay tuned into her, and which you should, click on that link and hit the bell. So if if she's inspired to, put something on that backup channel, we'll be there.
Yeah, keep it techie. Michael Holt in the chat had a question for you. He says, "Keep it techie. Were you contacted for this position by a recruiting firm?"
Yes, I actually was, and that was one thing I wanted to point out earlier, but we got off to something else. But um, I would say 85% of the positions that I've interviewed for 85 to 90% of the positions that I've interviewed for, it's been some recruiting company finding me. And I apply like crazy, and I never hear back from the companies that I apply for. And I'm not sure what that issue is, but
Application
most
goes
of
right
the
into a
time,
black hole.
yeah, yeah. So I get all. I mean, it's crazy. Recruiters hit me. The ones that seem promising, is from some recruiter finding me and seeing that I'm close to what they're looking for. So
Mhm.
and just to point that out, just to go back and give it a stamp of approval. What Mike said earlier, your LinkedIn is very important. And my that was my point for saying that the recruiters, they look for you, and if you have a great, because that's your first, uh and I'm losing a word here, but that's your first impression. Them looking at your LinkedIn and seeing what you have, and your experience to even want to hit you up. So it's one thing you want to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's your billboard. You know,
Yep.
if you got a nice billboard, people are gonna want to buy the product, which is you. So you got to be able to sell that billboard or put that billboard up correctly. You ever seen a billboard where the ad is kind of peeling off from it? It's fading, hasn't been touched in quite some time, needs to be taken down and replaced. That's what happens when you have a bad LinkedIn account or a LinkedIn profile. Um, it starts to fade. It doesn't get a whole lot of hits because it hasn't been updated. You don't have a picture up there, or you do have a picture up there, and it's not a very good picture. I see some women on LinkedIn with some very questionable profile pics, and I just go, what were you thinking? This is not Match.com. This is not Tinder. Why does that pick up there? Yeah, so all that stuff is important. But with that being said, I last thing I just want to point out is that I do offer mentorship, to people on the channel. So if you're a subscriber and you want some advice or mentorship, I offer that. I've helped several people on here get jobs behind the scenes. So uh, I do look over resumes and things of that nature. Give advice, like I just been giving out all this hangout. Um, you know, this is my way of giving back. So yes, Rainy Woman, definitely get that up and going. All right. With that being said, we're going to close out and thank you all for joining us and have a good night. Make sure you hit the
Peace.
like button as you leave as well, if you have not hit the like button already. So, and share the video if possible.